Hey guys, so if they ever make a Young Marauders movie, they should totally cast Ezra Miller as a young Professor Snape. He would be so perfect for the role. Though obviously they're not going to cast one actor to play two different roles in the Harry Potter universe. But on the other hand, they have already cast 4 actors to play Grindelwald so far. Well, 4, 3, because there's the whole polyjuice potion, so I don't really know where that fits into it all. But talking about polyjuice potion, I think it's so ridiculous that when Hermione went into Gringotts as Bellatrix Lestrange, the goblins could tell straight away that she wasn't actually Bellatrix. Yet Grindelwald managed to fool all of the Aurors who were meant to be like the police, the FBI of the wizarding world. I mean, nobody thought to check if this criminal is really the person that is actually in charge of the whole Auror department. It just seems so ridiculous. They should just put goblins in charge of the wizarding world. I mean, if goblins ran the wizarding world, there would be none of these problems. Just put them everywhere, but then they'd probably try to take over anyway. Anyway, so let's get into the review. Look, I'm not going to say that this was an amazing movie. I think that Mads Mikkelsen, however you say his name, is definitely the best portrayal we've had on screen of Grindelwald. I think he did a really, really great job. So basically, the movie opens with Grindelwald and Dumbledore meeting in a cafe. And Dumbledore basically says, I only joined you because I was in love with you. And look, I just feel like I get that Dumbledore is the good guy, but it would be refreshing to see him struggling a little bit, because it feels like sometimes he gets made out to be a little bit too good, a little bit too righteous, and I just don't think that he is that good, because some of the things that he does in the book, like leaving Harry with the Dursleys, and I get the whole blood curse, protection, whatever thing, but at the same time, he never really tried to check up on Harry, even though he knew that they were horrible people. And there's been so many other things that just really rub me the other way about Dumbledore. So whenever they just try to make him out to be so perfect, I'm like, yeah, I don't really buy it. I don't really buy that you did everything that you did just because you were in love. I think some of it came down to him wanting power a lot as well. So anyway, the whole thing with Jacob's fake wand is that it was to confuse Grindelwald, because they needed to confuse Grindelwald because he could see into the future because of this magical animal that gives you the gift of sight or something. Anyway, so Jacob was definitely my favourite character. I think he's hilarious. So basically Tina, we didn't really see a lot of Tina, or really much at all. She was the head of the USA Auror department in this movie. That's the explanation they gave for her not being in the movie. And we see her briefly in the end, greeting Newt. I don't know, maybe the actress was busy at the time. I don't know, and to be honest, I don't really care much because I didn't really like her character. I found her character to be a bit boring, so I didn't really miss her from the movie. And it felt like in the previous movie, they were obviously setting her and Newt up to be this big love story. And then nothing happened, and it feels like there's this huge gap in the writing, like they should have explained why her and Newt weren't together, and then we have Newt's assistant constantly flirting with him throughout the movie, so I don't know if that's meant to mean that they're together now. See, my main problem with this movie is the script. The script just needed a lot of work because it just was slow moving. It didn't really explain the plot holes that it should have. And like we see young Minerva, young McGonagall for like 1 minute, and it just felt like fan service. Like There's nothing wrong with a bit of fan service, don't get me wrong. I really enjoyed seeing a young McGonagall there for a minute or so, but still, it was just like this random thing that they put in the script, and then there was so many things that they really needed to cover but they didn't cover. So the whole thing with Credence is basically that Credence is, yes, he is actually Aurelius, however you say it, Dumbledore. So he is basically the brother of Aberforth. So I'm not really sure if he knew about him growing up, so he is the nephew of Dumbledore. Dumbledore is his uncle, and yeah, I don't really know. Somebody let me know in the comments down below if you got that. I didn't really catch whether or not Aberforth and Dumbledore actually knew about him growing up, but I don't think that they did. Like, I would hope not, because otherwise it would be pretty horrible if they left him at the orphanage, and that doesn't really feel like something that they would do. But like I said, I'm not a huge Dumbledore fan. I think he can be a little bit dodgy, so who knows? Anyway, so Ariana, Dumbledore's sister, was apparently an obscurial, just like Credence. So obviously that is something that runs in the Dumbledore family. So we have a runtime of roughly 2.5 hours. And look, I'm just going to say, it did feel like it dragged on a little bit in parts, and it felt like it didn't need to drag on. It felt like there was so much story to tell. It wasn't about the runtime, it was just about the writing in general. So in this movie, we do get a fight between Dumbledore and Grindelwald, and it feels like it was such a letdown. These are two of the most powerful wizards in existence. They should have this epic fight. Yet it wasn't even as good as the one between Dumbledore and Voldemort. And I feel like they really needed to do more with that. They needed to put in a lot more effort, because even though this isn't the final fight, the one where Grindelwald gets defeated for good, it still feels like it should have been a lot more impactful than it was. So we see Credence and Queenie turning back to the light side, turning good after seeing what Grindelwald is truly capable of, and nobody was surprised at that. Like, nobody. We could see it all coming a mile away. So Queenie and Jacob get married in the end, which was nice, and it is definitely open for a sequel. Who knows what's going to happen with all the drama surrounding the movie, but honestly, it just felt like it was a filler movie. Not to say that things didn't happen in the movie that were important to move the story along, but still, it was definitely a filler movie. And it just felt empty and flat at times. Like, it just didn't have that magic behind it, you know? It didn't really have the heart that it should have had for the epic war storyline that they were going for. So we felt like Newt was just along for the ride. I love Newt's character. He's such a fun character, but it just felt like he didn't really have much of a point in this movie, but I'm glad that he was in it. And I just feel like there's so many cool things they could do with this universe. And I just hope that in the 4th movie, they go into some flashbacks of like young Grindelwald and young Dumbledore and just seeing them together. And even in the present day, seeing a young Tom Riddle rising up and starting to become Voldemort, I would love that. And I know a lot of other people would as well. So anyway, I feel like Grindelwald needed more of a backstory. I feel like we obviously know his story to an extent, but I really would have liked to get to know him more. I feel like he was presented as a very one-dimensional villain, and he isn't one. He's actually he's got a lot of layers to him. And you could tell the Credence scenes were definitely cut. Probably because of all the drama behind the scenes, they wanted to sort of minimize Ezra Miller's part. But look, I really feel like they did a disservice to the story. It really needed to be extended, his scenes, his character storyline. It really needed to be fleshed out. And it was a really interesting storyline. it was one of the most interesting parts of the movie, so they really should have just not cut those scenes. So hopefully maybe they'll have an extended edition in the future when all the drama dies down a bit. So look, I know these are kids' books, but I feel like it would be really cool if they went in a slightly darker direction, because I was in a pretty packed out theatre and I honestly couldn't see any kids. It was all adults like me who had grown up with the franchise, so it would be cool if they did take it in that more adult direction, because that's one thing I've always really wanted to see, is a more grown-up Harry Potter universe. So anyway, look, I feel like there's something I have to say. I really hate this whole thing with J.K. Rowling. I feel like it's such a double standard that everybody is still saying she shouldn't have been a part of this movie, yet Ezra Miller was still a part of it, and he was actually physically violent towards a fan, I think a woman, and yet he doesn't seem to be getting half of the backlash that J.K. Rowling did, and it just feels so unfair. I just feel like even though I don't think she did anything wrong, even if you do think she did something wrong, we need to start separating the art from the artist. Like, it's just got to stop. Can't we just take it for the actors playing a role? We don't have to put them under a microscope in their personal lives. Anyway, so look, I honestly think this movie definitely had a lot of room for improvement, but I still had a very enjoyable time watching it. So I would give it a 7 out of 10. So let me know in the comments down below what you thought of the movie and what you're hoping to see in a fourth movie if it gets made.